Hello and good morning, everyone. On today's small business news update, we have an article. Today is April the 27th, and we have an article that was written a few months ago, but is not necessarily time sensitive. And this article was titled 3 Reasons Why Your Small Business Should Go Cashless. Things are always going to change, especially in retail. You see, technology updates, you see material updates, you see equipment updates, you see all of these things. But one thing that you have to be so sensitive about in retail is the fact that you cannot let your emotions override what the consumer actually wants. And so one thing that you can do is when there's a new piece of equipment to help you be more efficient, you can make that judgment call based on what you like. You can make it based on what your employees like or whatever it might be. When there is a new accounting software, when there is a new material that you could sell, when there's whatever it might be, you can enter into that without very much risk because it is mostly based on what you want, what fits the needs of your business. However, when you start tinkering with how a customer consumes your business, or I guess you could say how a customer shops with you, you have to be so careful that you don't let your emotion or your feelings on the subject override how you think the customer should behave or how the customer should act. And so one thing that, we could maybe consider this being very similar to is allowing people to write checks in your business. Being in the feed industry, it seems like our business is 5 to 10 years behind the majority of other businesses. So when you have, convenience stores and other businesses, coffee shops, and these like higher, quickly moving businesses, it seems like feed stores are going to be 5 to 10 years, and even grocery stores, things like that are so much behind these other businesses. So I think as a general rule, we have to be slower to adopt these new technologies when it comes to the consumer side than other people. But it's similar to taking checks. At some point, when it gets to something so low that only scam artists are the only ones writing checks, I think that it's time to get rid of a certain technology. And cash is one that I think might completely move out at some point in maybe not our business, but for certainly, small ticket items and things like that, convenience stores and coffee shops and things. So this article brings up some very good points that I think a lot of businesses should consider. So it's talking about, should a business go cashless? And so what it starts out with is, when's the last time you even paid cash for something? I think that's a good question to ask yourself. I personally use cash quite often, but again, it is because in our business we have some cash. We sell things on the side for cash and things. So without looking too sketchy, that is basically the only reason why I carry cash is because of our business. But the one thing that it brings out is first that it boosts checkout efficiency. So this is actually I appreciate the author of this article for being actually consumer centric. He is actually thinking on the side of the consumer, not just for the business. The first thing is it boosts checkout efficiency. It says consumers today are busy and don't want to spend time waiting in line. That's why companies like Starbucks have started promoting mobile order and pay apps that allow consumers to pay ahead of time. So he goes into saying that 43% of internet users would rather scan and go than wait in a checkout queue. I think that this is something to think about. Cash does slow down a line. Especially a mobile payment. I know that a credit card payment is probably just as inefficient as cash would be in a checkout line, but that is something to consider with a mobile payment. The second thing he says is it makes accounting easier to manage. Now, this is where your personal feelings can get intermixed into, being on the consumer side of things and thinking about only yourself on your accounting side. However, he brings up some good points that you save labor. You save not only the labor of having to start up to open drawers every day, but also to break down drawers every day. And then also on the accounting side, I know that in our business, the cash deposits, the check deposits are the worst part of the accounting side, because it is very rarely just perfect. It's very rarely exactly on. Whether somebody wrote a check wrong, whether somebody, were off a few pennies, those are things that you have to go in and manually tinker with. When you are accepting a credit card, it tells you how much the credit card is pulled, and everything is so seamless. So the amount of savings you could maybe have on labor with a cashless option are probably something that you could consider into your pricing of products even. It might be that much of a savings in labor when you think about 20 minutes every day, 30 minutes every day opening up a drawer, when you think of 30 minutes every day of breaking down a drawer. And then the accounting side of things, you're looking at an hour plus per day of labor. That starts to add up over weeks and months and years of amount of labor that you could save by going to a cashless option. And finally, a little bit consumer-centric, a little bit thinking on the business side of things. He finally notes in the last thing that it reduces risk. He says, for obvious reasons, keeping cash on hand increases the risk of theft. Not only do you have to worry about being robbed by random criminals, but unfortunately, you also have to worry about your own employees taking from the register. Not too long ago, he goes into a story about a coffee shop that went cashless after being robbed at gunpoint. So, several things to consider here, but I think the most valuable thing that he brought up was the amount of speed that you could do, and that might be something to consider if you have a very fast, you deal with rushes like a lunch rush, a dinner rush, a breakfast rush, whatever it might be, that you might think about even timing a cash transaction, timing a credit card transaction, and seeing which one of those are faster for you. But if that is way faster, that is something else to consider, that a consumer would appreciate the line moving faster if you're cashless, and that appeals to a lot of people. One thing about it, though, is you are tearing off a Band-Aid with a lot of people, and I know that scares a lot of businesses, having to, get yelled at by whatever percent of the people you check out pay with cash. But that is something to consider, is how many people will it frustrate? How many customers would you lose over it? In a small ticket item such as, coffee or whatever it might be, restaurants, some smaller restaurants, convenience stores, I don't know how much it would help, or how much people would be frustrated about that. And then one thing that he didn't bring up that I immediately thought of, though, is, cash and checks, you don't deal with any fees. You don't deal with any finance fees or anything like that. And with a credit card option, especially in these low-ticket items, things like convenience stores and coffee shops, when you're dealing with a low-ticket item, you're probably paying a considerable amount of fees. And that is something to consider if you're losing, if you're doing $1 million in business and you are doing right now half of it in cash, half of it in cards, you would be doing, say your fees, 3% would be on the extreme side of things. But if you're doing $1 million in business and 3% were fees, that would be $30,000 in fees. Well, if half of that was cash, you would only be paying $15,000 in fees. So you got to think about, if I'm going to switch to all cashless, then I would move from $15,000 in fees to $30,000 in fees and not do any more business. That's something to think about. I don't know how much labor you would save. I don't know how much faster the line would move, but you might take that in consideration when you're thinking about the fees that would go up as a result of going to a cashless option. Now, if you're on, I think our fees are like 1.9% or something like that. However, we're doing large ticket items. But we pay tens of thousands of dollars in fees every year, and that is something that I don't know if we could ever move to, because it would be a considerable amount of fees that would increase as a result of that. However, something to think about if you're a small pop-up shop or something like that, going cashless, I think that might be something in the way of the future. Thank you for listening. Please give me your thoughts, your comments, whatever it might be. Thank you.